Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the LitRPG podcast. I'm Ramon Mejia, here to bring you the latest LitRPG news, reviews, and of course author interviews. This week is episode number 249 of the show. I got 4 new reviews for you. I want to give a quick shout out to special listener, Cory Covert, who actually recommended one of the books we're reviewing in the podcast today. I just want to give him a thanks. Turned out to be a wonderful book, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. This week we're going to be reviewing 4 books, and again, or 3 books and a webcomic. That's going to be, the first book is going to be Otherworld, Underdog, book number 4. Also, The Land of the Undying Lord, The Infinite Worlds, book number 1. Then A Broken Bond, the second book in that same series. And then last but not least, it'll be the webcomic I'm Destined For Greatness, which is a fan-translated webcomic. So there you go. Before we get into any of that, though, we're going to go into LitRPG news. And in LitRPG news, our first story is going to do with the Soundbooth Theater. They have been working on this secret project for quite a long time. I think it's a couple years since Jeff told me about it. Jeff Hayes, who's the head of the company, wonderful nerd in his own right. His company, Soundbooth Theater, has actually started to directly and independently distribute some of their audiobook products. And for those who don't know, this is very challenging to do. This is hard to do. He's actually also developed an app that's coming out in the next few days, which will allow you to now listen to it on the web browser, which we can do now, but also on your app, on your phone, Android, iOS, whatever you have. And so you can purchase them and listen to them at your leisure. And this is a huge investment of time and energy and resources, of course, to get the kind of thing going on. And I'm super proud of my buddy for getting it done. And for those of you who don't know, Soundbooth Theater audio is among the best. A lot of their stuff is LitRPG. Not everything they do is LitRPG, of course, but a lot of good chunk of it is, and I'm super happy to always have that be the case, as are many of our audiobook listeners. But not all of the works that they worked on are actually going to be on this new platform to purchase directly from them. And that's more to do with the fact that ACX, which is the company that Audible uses to upload their stuff through audiobook narrators and writers, they give you an exclusivity contract clause option. And so some of the titles that some of the theaters worked on are under exclusive contract to use that platform only. But there is still quite a nice selection of stuff that's available for you to purchase directly from Soundbooth Theater. Not just to say a few of the benefits of this, some audiobook platformers, which will be named nameless, charge listeners $19, $25, or even more, depending on the book length size, per audiobook. And some others use other forms of negotiation or subscription model services. But they also take 60 to 75% of that revenue from authors and narrators. So those platforms take 60 to 75%, and the audiobook narrators and authors of those original content get what's left over, and they might have had to split that as well between them. Soundbooth, on the other hand, is charging $10 to $14, and the $14 experience is apparently added material, extra sound effects, music. Well, I think most of the stuff they're offering is just $10 per audiobook, and that money goes directly to the folks who made it, either the ebook author or the narrator, of course. And so from a consumer standpoint, this is a much better deal. From the perspective of an audiobook author or narrator, this might be a better deal as well, depending on what sales do. But it's definitely something you want to take a look at if you're a fan of Soundbooth stuff, or if you just want to check out some new titles inexpensively. This might be a wonderful way for you to do so, and also support a member of the community. So the site's up now. You can purchase these stuff through the play the audiobook or audiobook deep dives. That's the extra $4 version, extra $4 from their website. Again, in a couple days, they're going to be having the Android and Apple apps So you can actually download them and listen to your phone as well. And one purchase gets you all these different ways to listen to them, of course. And to help promote this, actually until November the 15th, the company is giving you a special deal. If you buy 3, you'll get 15% off when you use the special code LAUNCH15. And you can use that code as many times as you want to, as long as you have at least 3 audiobooks in your cart. And so I'll have a link in the show notes for you to get to that site to do it. But it's actually super, like I said, this is a complex project that's taken it literally a couple of years to do. And I'm super proud of my buddy Jeff Hayes for getting it done. So there you go. In other LitRPG news, we have Michael Tradfield did an AMA recently, or Ask Me Anything, on Reddit, LitRPG group. He also did one for his Facebook author page, where he's answering these questions live as they come in on chat. So it's lots of fun to always see him talk to his fans, talk about the works that he's working on, his scheduled releases, all that great stuff. So definitely check it out. We'll link in the show notes again for that Facebook live video chat stream that he did. In Plagiarized Stories news, we've been working tirelessly here at the podcast, hunting down plagiarized stories these last few weeks, and it honestly feels like we might have won, at least temporarily. This week, I could only find one plagiarized story that was in the LitRPG and Gamelit search sections. I'll qualify that. And even the one I found, it was published on 10/16, so a couple weeks ago. Nothing since then. That was completely obvious that I could find in, again, the LitRPG and Gamelit genre section. So the question is, did we win? Did we actually make enough of a nuisance of ourselves between myself and the other listeners who leave 1-star reviews for these plagiarized stories, or just notifying, the original authors on what novels were wrote, and helping them to get these stories taken down, that the plagiarists like, we'll just give up on these genres, or maybe they give up in general. I would like to think that Amazon, closed their accounts, but it's pretty easy to open up new accounts. So we'll have to see. They might have just moved on to other genres where they're not going to be hassled, or they can hide away their plagiarism a little bit more. Genres like cultivation or romance or whatever. But for now, this feels like kind of a win, even if it is temporary. So we just have one plagiarized story that I found. It's called The Fables. It's stolen from a web novel of the same name. There you go, link in the show notes. That's the only plagiarized story I could find this week. And again, if you find your stories plagiarized and it's LitRPG or Gamelit, feel free to send a message to us and we'll be happy to help you. Try to get taken down, or at least leave a 1-star review so people know that it's a plagiarized story. You can contact us at feedback@keepbypodcast.com or litrpgpodcast@gmail.com. Okay, on to stuff that is out now that I haven't had a chance to read. This includes Lightbringer, Book 1 of the Axis Monday Chronicles, a LitRPG adventure. Also out is Tales from the Upgrade by Dean Henniger. There you go. Also out is Tower Climber, a LitRPG adventure, as is The Sigillist Mark of a Mage, and Tolara, A New Life. Also out is the second book in the Beastborn series called Exiled Lands. Sacred Cat by Harmon Cooper came out actually last week. And the 6th book in the Respawn series is out, as is the 5th book in the Bad Guys book series. The 3rd book in the Eternal Line series is out for you to enjoy. The novel Written by Joshua Kern is out. Tales of the Dungeons Volume 4 is out for you. It's a short story collection. Dragon Heart Book 8 is out, and a novel called Game Shift, Hayden's book number 3. This one actually came at the end of September, but a listener actually pointed out that we hadn't mentioned it, and it's mostly because the author does not have a consistent cover art. Like the first book in this series, I only recognize it by the cover art, and book 2 and book 3 have completely different cover art styles, so that's probably why I just missed it. But I did remember enjoying book number 1. It's just, advertising in this particular series seem to be going well. But still, it's out if you like the series, so I'm letting you know it's out. On to new audiobooks. We got lots for you to enjoy here. The 3rd book in the Pixel Dust series called Auction of Souls is out. The 2nd book in the Eternal Online series, The Ruined Temple, is out as an audiobook for you. The 1st book, Crota, in the God's Game series is out. I actually feel like this is a republish for them. I'm not sure why. I've seen it. I feel like I've seen it before. The first Mind Games is out as an audiobook. The second book in the Evasion series is out as an audiobook, An Equation with One Unknown. The third book in the Clan Dominant series is out for you to enjoy, called The Sleepless Ones. Book 6 in the Arcane Kingdom Online series, Dream Druid, is out. The first book in the it's the Define Divinity series, Fragmented Divinity, is out. The sixth book in the Somnia Online series, Fusion, is out. Second book in the Snake's Path series is out. The Caller's Challenge, book number 1, Downfall and Rise. Also, for you Halloween lovers and people who love scary stories. And this is definitely scary, horror-ish LitRPG from Jonathan Brooks, called Child of Fear. It's the second book in the Paranormal LitRPG Dungeon Core series, is out as an audiobook. Something Full of Murder Hobo at Dakota Crowd, a great book, by the way, is out as an audiobook for you to enjoy. And the 9th book in the Good Guy series, For Beheadings and a Funeral, out for you now. Okay, on to stuff that's coming out in the near future. This is where I reel up a bunch of stuff that I found pre-orders for. It's LitRPG as far as I know. Crimson Sam's out on October 31st. November 1st is going to be How to Defeat a Demon King in 10 Easy Steps. I'm assuming just from the audiobook, this was actually a weird story here. The audiobook for this came out like 3 months ago. It was picked up as a direct, when I say Audible production. So it got a ton of press, ton of promotion, did really well, got lots of positive reviews. And it's only now on November the 1st that it's coming out as an ebook. It's actually out temporarily, I think, a couple months ago. And it picked up 20 reviews and then it kind of disappeared and it's back now. So I'm not sure what happened with that, but it's coming out. So if you liked it's here. I plan to at least give it a read. The third book in the Underverse series is out on November the 1st. November the 3rd, it'll be The Master of Metal, which is a translated Russian novel. November the 3rd, our very own Raymond Johnson, who is the host of the LitRPG audiobook podcast, he got a horror gamelet story published. It's been picked up by a LitRPG-centric ish publishing company, and he wrote it. It's there. I've read a little bit of it, and it's just not my style, so I probably won't be reviewing it. But and Raymond Johnson, he's like, "Hey Ramon, I'm getting this thing out. It's probably not your thing. The game is broken in the first book. It'll be fixed in book 2, and there's a lot of horror stuff, but and he was totally right. It's not my kind of thing. I'm not super into horror. Ray Johnson he's a big horror fan. A lot of the stuff that he's written as short stories is horror. And if you're into that, hey, this might be your cup of tea. It just didn't really work for me. But again, I haven't read the whole thing. It's not getting in positive or negative. It's just that this is definitely of the time of Halloween, and so it definitely fits in that theme. And if you're a horror fan and LitRPG fan, I definitely encourage you to pick it up. If there's nothing else, then to support a fine writer and friend of the show. On November the 4th, the fourth book in the 20-Sided Eye series is going to be out, called Death is the Destiny of All. I forgot to actually say the name of Raymond's book. It's Ray's The Nightmare Game. So there you go. For you who are just listening, he promoted this book and he forgot to actually tell us what it is, what it's called. It's called The Nightmare Game, the original MMORPG murder, mutilation, offensive, and repulsive player game. So there you go. November the 4th book in the 20-Sided Eye series, Death is the Destiny of All. November the 10th, the first Peak of the Force, LitRPG Worksheet series called Heavenly Throne 3. On November the 10th, the 6th book in the Monster Maces and Magic series. November the 10th, the 4th book in the Alchemist series. On November the 10th as well, it'll be the 2nd book in the In Prison Online series. November the 11th, the 3rd book in the Beta Tester series called Bugs and Loopholes. On November the 13th, a new series from Xander Boyce and Mount Press, Tall Rock, a fantasy LitRPG adventure. On November the 13th, a new book from Aaron Hallway. It's going to be Exodus, the Prodigal Son, real RPG story. On November the 19th, a sequel I'm looking forward to. The 2nd book in the Aussie Mana Apocalypse, which is a very funny Australian-centric first book. And it's called Fair Dinkum Dungeon Diving. On November the 10th, it's Layer, a superhero LitRPG adventure, Henchman book number 1. On November 23rd, Biomedical Self-Engineering book number 2. December the 1st, The Twilight Hatchling, Dreams from Reality book number 2. December the 2nd, Beta Tester book number 4 called DLC. December the 3rd, League of Losers Book 2. December the 10th, Project Stellar Book 3. December the 11th, A Grim Demise and Even Worse Resurrection Bone Knight series. On December the 14th, a new Restoration Translation series called The Keepers of Limbo. On December the 15th, the Underhill Chronicles Book number 2. December the 16th, Intro Network Book number 3. December 22nd, Bad Guys Book number 6. On December 28th, Small Unit Tactics Volume 2. December the 30th, Primacy Online Book number 5. And December 31st, the Arkham Online Chronicles Book number 5. So all kinds of stuff till the end of the year. Okay, on to new releases and reviews. Okay, first book this week is going to be The Otherworld, Underdog Book number 4, written by Alexei Osatuk. It is 385 pages, $6.99. It's not available on Kindle Unlimited as of the recording of this podcast. A lot of times the people who translate the Russian novels, they'll leave it as not in Kindle for a little while, and then they'll drop it eventually, so be aware. Here's the author's description. After battling the hyenas, Eric gets a notification that something called a place of power has been found. That is the only clue that might help him get back to save his native world. But there's a problem. The system needs mana to calculate a route. Eric simply doesn't have any, and he doesn't know when he will. That is because, due to the strange laws this world lives by, Eric's mana supply isn't filling up. But the great system also exists here, though its laws are only partially functioning. Having found himself in this alien and dangerous world without the magic or support of his loyal Gorgie, Eric understands that the kid who saved him, Batter, is currently his only source of useful information. That is a chance to understand and gain knowledge about this world, and in all likelihood, find a way to rustle up some mana. Okay, that's a fairly accurate description. Full disclosure, I received advance copy for review. I purchased a copy when it became available. This is almost a standalone novel in this particular series. The main character has been transported from his native world to another dimension, whereas mana doesn't regenerate, and the entire novel revolves around him not only finding a way to get his mana back, but helping the beastkin-like locals that he meets and finding a new source of power to help himself grow. There's lots of action and adventure, but little connection to the main quest events for the previous books in the series. He's literally transported for a book to another dimension. It's kind of an change of pace. It's enjoyable in its own right, but if you're looking for something that does involve advance like the main plot line, this is not going to satisfy you whatsoever. It's slice of life, and it has its own little plot points. But it is almost a separate side entity story, which is perfectly fine. I liked it. I had a good time with it. The price on this is going to drop a little bit of going to be a little prohibitive for most people. It's like almost $7, $6.99 at this point. And again, it is 385 pages, so it's a little bit expensive of a purchase price. If you're a fan of the series, you probably read about it. I'd recommend reading this even as a standalone. It would be fun if it's on Kindle Unlimited. But until that happens, it's a little hard to give it a full recommendation. I bought it just because I enjoy this. I got an advance copy, but I also purchased, of course, when it came out. But it's a good addition for fans who like the main character and his adaptability and his power set. But again, it's also just kind of a fun intro to the series. If you've never read anything in the series, perfectly fine. Just drop into book number 4 and you'll probably be satisfied because it feels like an isekai novel, which I'm probably saying wrong. Transported to a fantasy world thing that you don't need a lot of background information for the main character to understand what's happened to him. And because the game system and the world is so different, all the world building is done again right from the start, so you don't feel like you're lost. But it might be a chance to just dip your toes in the series if you want. But again, I'd only say so if it's on Kindle a bit eventually. For me, I had a good time with it. I enjoyed the little shift from the main storyline temporarily, but I do look forward to getting back into the main series world in the next book. But for me, it gets a score of 7.4 out of 10. Again, a very middle of the road enjoyment, knocked down a little because of the price point, also because it doesn't really advance the plot, but you don't need to if you're just thinking this as an independent kind of side story. That's The Otherworld, Underdog book number 4 with a score of 7.4 out of 10. And next up, we have The Undying Lord, The Infinite World, book number 1, written by J.T. Wright. It is 519 pages, $2.99. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. The infinite world, ever-changing and ever-growing. New nations and races rose and fell almost daily. New classes were discovered and the old ways were lost. Monsters and beasts roamed the earth and were slain by soldiers and adventurers who were in turn killed by stronger threats. Heroes and villains created new epics and were forgotten when their successors appeared. This was the way of the infinite world. Summoned into place in this chaotic place, a young boy with no name and no past must learn to survive. Bound to a master who doesn't care whether he lives or dies, he must become stronger. The question is, how? Do the people around him value him for who he is or merely for what he represents? The world holds endless possibilities. Only time will tell what the future holds for this boy. Okay. This book came out a while ago. I want to say maybe almost a year ago. I didn't read it when it first came out. I kind of looked at the novel description. It didn't say it was LitRPG there. It didn't say in the title. So, and reading just like the beginning portion, looking at it, it doesn't really jump out at you as being a LitRPG story. It is absolutely, looking at the reviews since then, it's like a lot of people said, oh, this is absolute LitRPG, this is fun, but it really wasn't until like a viewer of the podcast recommending it. I was like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. I'm not really clicking with anything else I'm looking at the moment, and I absolutely enjoy this tremendously. It was a great story, and I don't use that phrase lightly. This is stories full of action, adventure, and eventually it does take a little bit to get there. Lots of good RPG progression, and it doesn't advertise itself a little, which I think it's doing a disservice to itself, because this is definitely in the genre, and it truly is a great story. The story pacing reminds me a little bit of the Dritz Orden novels by R.I. Salvatore, in that it's really focused on like the main character, his introspective thoughts, and his core group of people that are around him as they go on these adventures, leveling up in this case, dungeon diving, exploring the world kind of stuff. But a lot of the focus story revolves around adventure, camaraderie, and again regular kind of introspective thoughts. The first part of this, maybe the first 30%, does like a really, like I said, a really good job of world building, laying the foundation for the characters, establishing their character flaws and making you care about them and wanting to see them do well, which is like really challenging to do, especially for a character who the main character has no background. He's a summons. And this is not the novel description. He's a summons, and he's a level 1 character, level 0 character. Without a name, without a past. He has no memories of anything happening before. So he literally shows up and he's kind of this tabula rasa, as a blank slate. He knows how to do regular things like talk and walk and stuff. But he has no background history. And the author was really, he did truly a great job of making the main character's actions and behaviors very consistent with that premise of him having no memory. He has no social skills. So the way he interacts with people is always awkward, and he doesn't know what they're talking about most of the time. And he's kind of the sponge who absorbs a bunch of information, and he figures things out. He's not stupid. But the behavior of the main character and the way he kind of clings to the few people he connects to is very much in line with that background. And I've read so many stories where they're like, the main character has amnesia, yet they seem to be amazing at everything. And they have a bunch of like opinions and points of view that they just have, even though those things are supposed to be developed upon interactions with life, with people, and experiences, right? And so the author, like I said, really did a great job of developing that main character who doesn't have a background, who doesn't have memories, personal memories, and the progression, scale that he does on a personal and also on RPG level, it was just fun to witness and be part of, and to kind of like exploring yourself. Would I take that particular character path, or I choose a different one? And once you're doing that, the story, the author has you hooked, and it definitely had me hooked in the story. Once the main character gets to the dungeon, which is called a trial in the story, the plotting is really well paced. Before that's a little slice of life and like developing world building, but once you get to the dungeon section, the plotting comes through very well. And there's a clear novel goal, and the characters are likable. He main character especially is easy to root for, and you're happy when everything good happens to him. So like I said, enjoyable story. On the RPG side of things are a little slow at first, with stated levels for the characters and classes, but actually not really much progression at the beginning portion of the story. And then but a lot of that's mostly just the authors doing the world building first, and kind of showing how the RPG mechanics and how the RPG progression is intricately tied to the culture of the world, and it just takes a little while to do. Once the main character starts acquiring skills and levels, and again, once they get to dungeon, all the RPG progression just like takes off. It's very much logical, and there's lots of leveling and skill progressions and good stuff for anybody who likes a crunchy story. Lots of notifications here, abilities, monster descriptions, all that stuff. So if you like crunchy story, this is definitely going to be a good feed for you as well. Overall, again, I thought it was a great story, and I'm glad I gave it a shot. I'm glad. Thank you to the listener who was nice enough to recommend this based upon his experience with the audiobook version of the story. And I gave it a shot, and I enjoyed it tremendously. So that's going to be The Land of the Undying Lord, the Infinite World book, number 1, with a score of 8 out of 10. And next up, we have book 2 in the Infinite World series, A Broken Bond, written by J.T. Wright. And again, I liked book number 1 enough that I immediately jumped into book number 2. This is 292 pages. It is $2.98. It's available on Kindle Unlimited, and here's the author's description. Having experienced his first survival-type trial, Trent Embra is eager to explore what else the world has to offer. There is only one problem. Not everyone comes away from a month of constant fighting untouched. Trent's friend, Tersa, is unhinged by her time in the land of the Undying Lord, and Sergeant Cullen means to see her fixed. Trent, enlisted to help, is dragged towards another trial, mostly willingly. Only time will tell if Tersa still has a place in the guard and what the Infinite World has in store for Trent. There we go. It's a short novel description for kind of a short novel for a LitRPG story. And just to recap real quick, I really enjoyed book number 1. I thought it was a great story. Good plotting of the story arc. And once the group reaches that dungeon, everything comes together really well. There's good world building, action, adventure, camaraderie in the story. And in book 2, a lot of that returns. There's still good adventure. There's still good world development, world building, and good camaraderie. However, the story plotting kind of disappears a little bit. The story becomes very much a slice of life story where you're following the main character and some other characters as they split apart and go their separate ways. And personally, I'm not a huge fan of multi-narrative stories. This one isn't bad. I like most of the characters, but there definitely felt like there were some introduced characters that were random, to say the least. And they don't interact with the main character. So in book 1, this happened a little bit as well, where you had like three or four different story arcs where you're following different groups as they're in like the big dungeon. But eventually in book 1, those stories arcs came together very nicely. In book 2, they don't. Like the story arcs are just separate and they don't ever connect together again. And so it was a little bit less enjoyable. Still enjoyed the story. I did. I just didn't think it was quite as enjoyable as book 1 in that particular series. I felt like these other characters are going on their own side journeys and they didn't really connect back to the main character who I really liked. It felt like they were tacked on a little bit, especially some of the random characters towards the end. And I'm sure they're all going to tie together in book 3. It's just that in book 2, it felt like it felt a little loose. So there you go. On the RPG side of things, still the same as book 1, still good stuff there. There's new information. I think the big twist for the RPG mechanics is definitely in the story, the advancement of classes and multi-classing, getting advanced classes by merging other classes that you have together. And I think the big thing there was that showing how these classes that you're taking actually impact you as a human being. So becoming a berserker makes you more aggressive, makes you less reasonable, Becoming a defender or cleric of the faith might make you more pious or more calm in that case. And so the actual personality consequences for choosing a particular path and you mastering your class really means that you have to master yourself, your own personality. So there's definitely some introspective personality development for these characters. And it's not just the main character, it's other characters in the story as well. So I thought it was well done. And again, the author does a really good job of making the RPG stuff very nicely woven into the actual culture of the world, of the story world itself. So good on them there. Overall, I still like the story, had a good time with it, but it does drop from great to just good from me. The characters are so likable. The RPG progression, action, adventure was all very satisfying. But again, there wasn't nearly as much plot advancement as I was expecting. And that might just be due to the fact that the novel is a bit over half the size of what book one was. And in a lot of ways, it kind of feels like it's half a novel when compared to that first book. So for me, still gets a good score, 7.4 out of 10. But again, just not quite as enjoyable as book one for me. That's The Broken Bond, The Infinite World book number 2 with a score of 7.4 out of 10. Hey, everybody. Last review for the show this week is going to be a web novel called I'm Destined For Greatness. There you go. It is 48 chapters and growing. It is free. There is no English distributor or official translator. And again, the story is fan translated, so you're going to get some wonky stuff sometimes. And if you want to support the author, I think it does have a native language distributor, which you have to look up. But here's the webcomic description. When you succeed at everything you try, you have no choice but to seek challenges elsewhere. Like in a game. But using the trash jobs that no one pays any attention to with the right attitude, you're bound to accomplish your goals. Even succeeding at the most impossible of quests, the main character bets everything he has. With my skills, I'll beat this game. So that's the description. This is a very entertaining slice of life webcomic about a board player in an MMO that likes to use unusual or even trash builds for his characters. He loses a big PvP tournament because of a bad crit roll and decides to rebuild his character using luck as his main stat. And most people, of course, consider luck a dump stat. Like nobody understands how it works. And so he's making that his main stat. And the adventure follows him as he hits this MMO on a hardcore mode and having Lady Luck on his sides, bringing some very interesting results to his adventures. The art is pretty good. It's in full color with the clean line work. It looks a little bit digital at some point, like you can see like the cell shading, especially in the shadow sections a little bit. And the backgrounds aren't really amazing. They're there. They don't necessarily detract, but they're not like some artists just have like a wonderful ability to do backgrounds without any problems. This one's like, oh, they're faded. They're a little, they're not amazing, but the story artwork gets the fun and action across. And again, it's not bad. It's just like, it's good artwork. The story again is pretty slice of life, just following the main character as he adventures. There's some nice humor here and there. But it's really just seeing how his luck stat build goes. There's a bit of crafting in the beginning of the story, and then it explodes out into advancing his class, getting some other characters to go along with him, and some adventures that just get bigger and bigger and bigger and more overpowered as it continues on. Overall, a good casual read, I think, with some decent action. Gets a score of 7.5 out of 10 for me, which is like middle of the road good. So it's a solid good score for me. So I'm Destined for Greatness with a score of 7.5 out of 10. Okay, that is it for the show. Thanks a lot for hanging out with us this week, ladies and gentlemen. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Patreon, and our website at LitRPGpodcast.com. All places you can get the latest episode of the podcast. You can also catch us on most of your podcasting apps under LitRPG Podcast. We have the link on our webpage if you want to get the RSS feed for the show. Also have links to join us for other Facebook groups where LitRPG authors and readers combine and talk and chat and talk about their favorite stuff in this genre that we all love. And of course, if you want to support the podcast in any way, shape, or form, help keep us free and ad-free, you can find out all the ways to support us at litrpgpodcast.com/support. And again, until we can hang out again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for hanging out with me and letting me talk about this genre that I love, LitRPG. And until we can see each other again, remember to go read some LitRPG. Goodbye, everybody.